So, I hear some discrepancy as you guys are processing through these together. And I love that because a lot of the math speak that I'm hearing is very good, but some of it is just coming down to arguing. So, let's process through this together. Anish, when I think about surface area of the square pyramid, how do I break up that process? Like, how did you start doing surface area?
Well, I know it's lateral area plus only one of the bases.
It's lateral area plus one base.
Yeah.
Now, how is lateral area different in a pyramid than it is in a prism?
So it's like half perimeter times length.
Yeah, it's half the perimeter times the slant height, or you can just calculate each side on its own, and especially since this one has a square base, come on, Smarty. There you are. Especially since this one has a square base, all the faces will be the same. So, easy way to start is do your base. So my big B here, I know is a square, so I can do 13 squared, and we get 169.
Yeah.
And that would be meters squared. My lateral area, if I want to break this apart, I have 4 faces that are each triangles, and the triangle formula is half the base length times the height. So each triangle is using the 13 and the 12. This is the same formula as the perimeter times the slant height times half. This is just breaking it apart to look at it a little bit more. 4 faces each have this area because they're all identical. So I can actually do half of the 4 and make this 2 times 13 times 12. I can do 2 times 13, which gives me 26, and do 26 times 12. 26 times 10 would be 260, plus another 2 26s. We get 300.
12.
Yep. If that's my lateral area, and this is my big B, I add them together, and my total surface area is going to be
481.
481 meters squared. Any questions on how that comes out? On the test, I'm not looking for right answers. I'm looking for correct processes. So yeah, that'll lead you to the right answer, but if all you have is the right answer, you got the question wrong. I'm looking to see your process. You must show your work. Go on.
Do you have to have, so for the LA you have 4 times half of 13 times 12. Do you have to half the 4 or can you half 13?
You can half anything you want, but halving 13 is a lot harder than halving 4 or halving 12. Multiplication's commutative. Order doesn't matter. I could rewrite this as 4 times 12 times half times 13. I could do the 4 times 12, then I could half that, and then I could multiply it by 13. You can do whatever order you want.
Yeah.
Why don't you multiply the 13 by 2?
Where?
Because you divided the 4
That 2 came from those. I did half of 4 just because that was easier.
Why are you doing times 4?
There are 4 triangles. There are 4 faces that make up the lateral area. The other formula that we use for lateral area just says, okay, you're going to do half the perimeter times the slant height. So my perimeter, to find that, I have to do 4 times the 13 to get my perimeter all the way around. And then times the slant height is 12.
Oh.
Well, half the perimeter times the slant height,
Oh, you just commuted it.
it's the same thing. So are you okay on why I'm allowed to do this? This is just a different manipulation of our thought process. Any other questions on 1? On 2, we now have a different kind of pyramid. Ozzy, what's different about this pyramid than the previous? Triangular base. So when we go to calculate our big B, how do we do that here?
It's 6 times 5.2 divided by 2.
Yeah, again, another manipulation of our formula. Instead of half little b times little h, I can do little b times little h and then divide by 2. So I know 6 times 5 is 30, 6 times 0.2 is 31.2 divided by 2. I could have also just divided the 6 by 2 and then multiplied 3 times 5.2 and I get 15.6.
Yeah.
So that's my big B. I circle it or something because I know I'm going to need it. Then my lateral area. What assumption has to be made here? And we've worked mainly with this type of shape. Ozzy, this was yours. Do you know what assumption we have to make?
That it's triangular, or like there's only 3 sides, like 3 faces.
Yeah, but if we're either going to talk about each of the triangular faces or we're going to talk about the perimeter of the moon,
The base is equilateral.
we have to assume that the base is an equilateral, or we have to prove it. But we don't necessarily know our Pythagorean yet. If you're not given enough information, you could have come to ask me, but this is an equilateral triangular base. So if I want to talk about perimeter, that's going to be 6 times 3. Then a half has to be incorporated because they're all triangles, and then times the slant height of 13. Order doesn't matter. So I could have also done 3 faces times half of the 6 times the 13. There's other ways that I can write this too, but either way, I can do 3 times 6, which is 18. Half of that is 9. 9 times 13.
117.
So when I add these up, what do you got, Ozzy?
132.6.
If it doesn't have a label, it's wrong. I will write on your paper, dogs, cats, pizzas, question mark, and mark every single one wrong.
Why do you have 13?
Because they're triangles. To find the area of a triangle, it's half the base times the height.
Oh, okay.
So we already talked about this, where if you have a rectangle, we know that's just base times height. But if I look at the triangle, I can still do base times height, but I'm only doing half of the area now, since it's a triangle.
What triangles are
Any triangle works like that. Whether it's equilateral or isosceles, we could cut one side off and move it to the other side and make it a different triangle. Either way, it's half little b times little h, as long as little b and little h are perpendicular to each other. So they have to make a right angle. The height and the base have to be perpendicular.
When are they not perpendicular?
If it's not perpendicular, it's not the height of the triangle. So to be in altitude, like let's say somebody drew a triangle, and they said, oh yeah, this is 12. And you're like, well, that's not the height because it doesn't make a right angle. So maybe you then see that this is actually 10, and if that has a right angle, then it's your height.
Oh.
But if they gave you like a diagonal length, you can't use it. It's worthless. I need to erase that before I capture this. It thinks it's funny, I think. How do we calculate volume of a pyramid or cone? Since we talked about this yesterday. Elena, do you know how we calculate volume of a pyramid? So back when we did prisms, it was easy. Take the area of the base, multiply it by how tall your object is. How's a pyramid different? This came out of one of those videos that you watched earlier this week.
You said the question again.
So if I think about the volume of a pyramid compared to its prism. So cubes are prisms, right? So if I think about what of the cube volume is taken up by the pyramid, and we can actually show this in a pretty cool way. So since you're struggling, this is worth showing again. So if and this water bottle doesn't work very well for this. If I take my pyramid and I fill it, well, gravity helps you sometimes, right? So I fill it dangerously to the top. How much of my prism, even though it's a cube, it's a prism, how much of it does it fill? Well, so obviously under half. Since I'm already in this, I'm already in it now. I'm going to run out of water here.
I can go refill it.
So, and this is always fun to look at too. I've now got 2 pyramids worth of volume here. Right? I've got a pyramid worth of volume in the cube sitting there, and I've got a pyramid worth of volume pointing down in. Have I filled the entire space?
No.
No.
Oh god.
The way that I can fill the entire space, that volume is filled volume. This volume's empty volume, especially if you didn't see it well on the video. Just figured I'd do it again here. I don't want to get your cards all soaked though. If I shove my pyramid into my cube, and if I had completely filled the pyramids, this would completely fill. But I couldn't fill the pyramids perfectly all the way up. And this actually, yeah, sometimes when I have a bucket, I can sometimes flip it and it just leaks a tiny bit. What we're trying to see is that the the volume of a pyramid compared to a prism has what relationship? Anybody?
1/3 times
1/3.
Oh, now I know what I did wrong.
So this volume of this guy compared to its prism takes up 1/3 of it. So then, Elena, how would I find my big B here? Because we see that the height of that thing is 15.
Like the big B is just the area of the base, right?
Yep.
So you do 3 times 3.
Yep, it is a square. So we just do 3 times 3. I know, excuse me, this is actually a 9. A third of 9 is 3 times 15 comes out to be 45
Centimeter cube.
centimeters cubed.
That's it? Yeah. That's not very much work. Or you
It's
can do
not.
it easier.
Wait. Wait, check my work. Hold that.
That is the right answer.
Oh, I didn't get like an update.
Does it like you?
No, it's just mad at me. Question 4 is one where a lot of people tend to have issues. Yeah.
What if you multiply, for question 3, would you multiply the 3 times 4 because it's 4 sides or like 4 bases?
How many sides we have is irrelevant.
It's not the pyramid, it's the area.
Okay. That makes
Big
sense.
B is our base area. So how many sides I have doesn't matter. It's how big is the base. And then it goes up to a single point. It's from math counts. So I was pit sweating like crazy, just to be honest with you guys. I had like Great Lakes under my armpits. So I took off that shirt and threw on one of these because I had extras. This is the function for finding the average of a set. So you know, add them all together, divide by how many there are. Sum, add them all together, divide by how many there are. This is the function for sum, or for average. So this is sum, so B greater than the average.
That's what I'm trying to figure out.
The thing people struggle with most here is their big B. I don't care if you already wrote this process down, you should write it down again. Because here's what we're looking at. We're going to break this base up. Right now, it's a hexagon. But we are going to break it up into 6 triangles. L-E-S. I can't write off the screen. So 6 times the triangle formula. 1/2 base times height. But when I look at each triangle, that has to come from this broken up hexagon. So what will be the base and the height for those triangles? Jaslyn is not. Oh yeah. Pentatonics, love it.
Okay, so you asked for the base and the height.
The little b and little h. So make sure when we're talking about this big B and big H, big B's area of the base. Big H, height of the whole thing. Little b and little h are little working numbers that come from my smaller, like less important values, but that's the perpendicular base and height of your triangle. So what values do I use there?
4.3 and 5.
I use this edge of 5 as my little b, and this 4.3 as my little h, because they're perpendicular. So 5 and 4.3. Any confusion for how I set that up? Now, it's easiest to do half of my 6, because we have odd and we have decimal. So I can do half of 6 first and just do 3. And then 5 times 4.3, well 5 times 4 is 20, times another 0.3 is another 1.5. And this comes out to tell me my big B is 64.5.
Hey, you got that right.
That is a working number, so hang on to it. We then, to find volume, we'll do our same formula. Big B and big H now, though. My big B we just calculated was 64.5. My big H here, do I use that 6.7 or do I use that 8?
6.
Ashley, what do you think? Do I use the 6.7 or the 8? Why do I use the 6.7? Because they're both heights. You're right, but why do I use that one? It's in the middle and it drops perpendicular to the base. The height of the object must be the altitude. We'll get to using this word more. Altitude, when a plane talks about its altitude, it's how far off the ground it is. If you talk about your altitude, it's how far off the ground you are. So altitude has to be measured perpendicularly. That height here is 6.7. Obviously, a calculator would be useful for this.
140.
Here's the funny thing, though.
I got that.
I multiplied by 3, and now I'm going to divide by 3. So I know that actually these values are just going to come back out to be this. So to make my life easier, I know that's 21.5. Sorry about the weird 20. Times 6.7. That's the math I need to do.
144.05.
It's not right. Meters cubed. And you would want to notate somewhere that that's volume. Either right beside it or something like that. Okay, what? Yeah, but you still need a label that you found the volume. Hey guys, to clarify, you need to have on there V equals. Whether it's out here or whether you write it off to the side of your final answer, you gotta notate, beyond just the label, you gotta notate what it is you solve for. So you gotta say V or VOL or something to say the volume was. Questions on this one?
I got it right.
Preguntas?
What does that mean?
Questions in Spanish. But it's more fun to say than the word questions.
Okay, question.
Because questions, you can't roll an R.
How much Spanish? You could
Okay, no.
Oh, that means a little bit.
Now, lots of people, when they originally saw the problem like this on your other homework, came to me and they're like, hey, you have a typo. And I'm going to pick on Monica, but I love when she comes and tells me that I made a mistake and I get to tell her, no, I didn't. Why might you? No. Now, she had every right. Hey, gentlemen, you probably just gave up and didn't fight with it long enough. She cares enough to come and talk with the teacher. So when you're saying, oh, you should really be like applauding the fact that she has that courage. But she had every right to think that I had made a typo initially. But that's because I need to push you to fix it before you start your work. What is wrong with the current setup? Not that it's a typo, but it just isn't set up right yet. Linus, I might as well come to you.
Over there, it's 4 inches and 5 inches as your base, but then your height is 4 feet, and so you need to turn that into 45 inches. 48
So not that that's wrong, but I just need to convert it so we can multiply that by 12 and find out that that's 48 inches. Now I've got inches, inches, and inches, and now I can solve my problem. All my labels have to match when I start. Check that first. Do not fall into the trap. So now, amount of water the aquarium. By the way, my friend has an aquarium like this. There really are corner aquariums that are made to fit into a corner and they have a flat front. They're pretty sweet. This would be really, really small. His is pretty big. So we want volume, right? So we're talking about water it can hold. It's a prism, even though it's got a triangle on the bottom, triangle on the top. It does not go to a single point. It's a prism. So my formula for my prism here, we just talked. Mr. Hoover, what's my formula for prisms?
For prisms, it's base, big B.
Big B.
Times
Big H. Remember, we want to figure out how much area is there, and then how high does it stack? Stack, quote unquote. So, figure out your big B first. Gravity works. So, off to the side here, I'm going to say big B. Well, it's a triangle in the base, so it's half little b times little h. That's going to be half, what's my little b? No, 5 actually. My little h is 4. That's going to become 10, and if we care, it's inches squared. I then want to plug that in. So I can now say 10 times 48, and my volume comes out to be... But that's not even what it asks me for. All it did was ask me for what formula works. This is how you find your triangle area. You either multiply by half or divide by 2. And then when you take it to find the volume, you got to multiply by its height, and there's its height. Any preguntas?
No, wait, how do you say that?
Preguntas. And actually, it should be tienes preguntas, asking, do you have questions? Because tiene, or tengo means to have, like I have. Like, tengo un pregunta means I have a question.
What about like dancing with tango?
That is, so they're spelled differently. They're different ones.
Mr. Hudson, you can actually roll the Q with question.
Question. Well, I don't know if that's rolling. Alright, moving on.
Oh, God.
Now this one,
There's actually a typo. Not the I.
yeah, that again was one of those weird things when it converts over from the other software. That's interesting. I've never had that issue happen before, that it changed the labels. That wasn't like in the software where I wrote it, they were fine. When it converted over, it glitched.
The I is inches. There's just N squared. Oh.
We can get faster at this, but we still need to write out the information that we know. Even when you're doing calculations in your calculator in your head, you want to write down those pieces and parts. Even if I can solve for big B in my head, we should still write down what it is. So if I know that it's half the little b times the little h, be careful. This prism is not set up like the other ones. It's not standing up. It's laying down, but this is still its base. So if I do half the little b times the little h, well, half of that is 3 times 5. That's pretty easy to figure out. That's 15. Then I go to set up my volume. Well, that's going to be my 15 times my 11. And I get 165
inches cubed.
inches cubed.
Why is it N?
We just discussed that. That was a glitch when it transferred over from the other software. You guys are smart enough to figure out that was just a glitch.
I noticed it. I was like, oh my gosh.
Yeah.
Why is the base 15? I thought
What type of prism is this?
it's a triangle. Oh wait. Oh yeah. Oh oops. Yeah.
In 3 dimensions, just like in Ender's Game.
Gravity works.
There's no up. There's only an up because we've determined there's a down. And the only reason there's a down is because there's gravity. But when you're working with a model, there's no up or down or left or right or front or back really till you make that determination. When it tells you it's a triangular prism, or when you look at it, what makes a prism is having a shape on one end and the identical shape on the other end. If I look at this rectangle, there's no identical shape on the other side. It goes to a straight line. If I look at this rectangle, there's no identical shape. When I look at this triangle and I go to the other side, there's my identical pairs of shapes. That makes my triangle base. Any other questions? That's why I said this is not set up like the other ones where it's not standing, it's laying, but the triangle is still your base.
If you're trying to solve for the volume by like multiplying the length times width times height and then dividing it by 3, I don't think it would work.
Well, first off, we wouldn't divide by 3 here anyways because we're working with a prism, not a pyramid.
Oh.
But you're talking about trying to divide by 2 at some point.
Oh.
So the question is, if I wait to divide by 2 till the end, would it still work? But I would not advise that you get in the habit of that because you want to first calculate the area of the triangle, then use that moving forward. So you need to do the half while you're calculating for the base. Actually, a bomb went off in here. Jeez, guys, you're so messy.
I know. Yeah. Thank you for
I'm joking. I threw things all over the floor.
You should spill that water.
Another way that we can do surface area when we're working with prisms, and we did this in class once, is pair up my faces. Your front face will be identical with the back. Your left will be identical with the right, and the top will be identical with the bottom. So we're going to have one face that uses both of these, makes 50. Another face uses both of these and makes 50 plus 25 is 75. And another face that uses these and makes 150. Add those up and then double it. If you have any other questions, come see me, AOR Extensions. Mastery is tomorrow.
Whenever I worry, I like to pray a lot on